I've been struggling with my voice coming in and out. It's not COVID or strep. It is ragweed and exhaustion. So just so everyone knows, it may go out completely. I know y'all will be real disappointed. So the first, we have 3 different policies to consider in our meeting, and I'm going to start with 1.300 board committees. And for an explanation of this proposed amendment, I'm going to turn it over to Chair Elrod.
Thank you. So the main change here is to change the names of teaching and learning to student outcomes and director's evaluation, or just evaluation. It's listed as evaluation in this policy, but it usually in our spreadsheet where you see appointments and assignments, it's listed as director's evaluation. So that would be changed to director support and evaluation. The reason for those changes is, I believe, especially with evaluation, as we've gone to a formative and summative, particularly our quarterly formative evaluations, that's more at a support position as we're trying to course correct if needed, provide additional feedback and support throughout that process before we do what's considered the evaluation per the state requirement, that annual meeting, or the annual summative. So I feel like it's important for us to put support and evaluation. Also, it goes along with what our current roles and responsibilities are, which are also listed in our current policy. So I felt like it was important to put the word support, and semantics are important at times. Student outcomes, I wanted to change that to student outcomes for teaching and learning, so it was more focused on the data and other pieces of information of what we're supposed to be doing within our roles. The current hope is, let me read this out, is that we would meet, of course, quarterly as they're supposed to. The first quarter, which would be in January, would be SEL, so the outcomes of SEL. Q2 would be literacy outcomes, Q3 would be all of our transition outcomes, and Q4 would be numeracy outcomes. Of course, if information comes in advance of this, or if there's something necessary, or if there's curriculum changes, or something along those lines, there would be additional information provided, but it wouldn't be specific to just that committee. It would be more focused on a deeper dive of all the different testing that we do. So that's why I wanted to change those 2 names. Dr. Severe, did I forget something?
I think you covered it.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going just going to go down the line. Everyone gets a chance to ask or say what they need to say. I'll start with Board Member Tyler.
Thank you. So I just have a little concern that we don't have any mention of teachers at all in any of our committees when we take away teaching and learning. We know that all the research shows that the factors for student success that schools have control over, the number one thing is hiring quality teachers. And so I would like to propose that we make it something along the lines of student outcomes and teacher support, or something along those lines where we are holding one hand and the other. There has been a real push in certain circles to devalue the work that our teachers do. And I'm concerned that if we completely leave them out as a necessary lever for student outcomes, that it will come across as if we also believe that they are disposable towards what our students can do. And so I would just like to do something in there to show that we are looking at the student outcomes, and we're also looking at the ways we have supported our teachers so that we can get these student outcomes, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. I did not consider that because, quite frankly, to the data that you were speaking of, it's just an understood that teachers have the biggest effect on what student outcomes are, more so than typical other supports, if you will. So I had not considered that. I should say that within our liaison positions, we do now have somebody that will be assigned to the MNEA compensation committee. Okay. So we will have that as well with MNEA, just so that there's more of a focus on teaching and within our teachers. But your feedback's appreciated. there's some feedback on that one. Maybe.
Okay, are you willing to consider adding something like that to it?
Sure. I would enjoy discussion from the rest of the board on that. Yeah.
Berthina, did you have anything?
Yes. This is just a nuance for me. Where you list director support and evaluation, can we do director evaluation and support? I see you kind of view it as evaluation as the final thing. I guess I'm thinking more of E4S. Sorry. Okay. In that, and I'd like to hear if there's any other feedback around that section.
If there's additional feedback on it.
Yeah. So I'm going to hold the rest of my comments.
Okay.
Cheryl? You're good? Aaron? No? Okay. Anyone else have follow-up?
May I ask a clarifying question?
Please.
For student outcomes, Member Tyler, I want to make sure I understand your request or suggestion. So it would be student outcomes and supports, or did you say student outcomes and I forget what we...
She recommended student outcomes and teacher support.
Teacher support. Okay.
So the two adjustments that have been mentioned during the conversation are rather than student outcomes and teacher support, and rather than director support and evaluation, director evaluation and support. Yes, Erin.
So I do think it's probably not just about teachers, right? When we're talking about student outcomes, actually, and I know the data on teachers and relationship to student outcomes, but actually principals as well, support staff as well. Like the term educators is, I think, broader. I don't know that it gets at the same thing that Chair Elrod is trying to get to, nor, I mean, I see you nodding, Ms. Tyler, so I think that educators would be a friendly amendment of some kind, but for lack of a better way of saying it, but I'm not sure how to do, I'm not sure what suggestion I'm making other than to say it's not just about teachers.
Are you suggesting maybe maybe educator support instead of teacher support as an addition?
If we're going to go in that direction, yeah. I'm personally okay with student outcomes, but I do think if there is going to be a change, I would rather see that change end up being something that reflects more broadly than just teachers.
Would you like to respond?
Sure. Yeah, no, that's completely acceptable. I struggled with that. I thought teaching paraprofessionals, nutrition services, principals would be a little long. So I just kind of squirreled it down to basically teacher support. And a teacher doesn't necessarily mean the one person. That it could be your paraprofessional is teaching you. It could be that the lunch lady line's helping you count your change. And so they're teaching you about that. So I can see how that could be confusing as if we're teasing away other groups. So I'm fine with educator support as opposed to teacher.
Cheryl?
Yes, so just for clarification, the title of the policy doesn't change the expected outcomes, correct? Okay. Just want to make sure that I'm understanding this, because it seems like we are going around to rename something that the name, of course, should or could reflect what the policy is, but as long as we don't change what the policy is designed to do, I don't think that that's going to be a major issue regarding, as far as the name is concerned.
Yeah.
Berthina?
I guess as we're broadening it out, and we're saying student outcomes, educator or teacher support, I would suggest we leave the name as teaching and learning. If that's what we're doing, I I guess my follow-up question to that is, what, so far in committee, we have talked about curriculum and instruction and things like that, not necessarily about educator or teacher support in those sense. So what is changing in the way in which we do this? I know you're looking to add academic data and presentations on that, but Dr. Battle has done those presentations throughout the year as well. So what are we looking to see as outcomes that we haven't seen throughout the year in the teaching and learning department committee? Yes.
Yes.
So currently within the policy, it just states that we have to have these committees. There's no fleshing out of what the responsibilities or request of those committees. It's just to have these. That, of course, changes dependent upon whoever runs those committees and at times the chair of the board in general. My desire for teaching and learning is for it to not just be about curriculum and mostly curriculum adoptions, though that is important information for us to know, but to be more focused on the outcomes. I have found that we have really robust conversations about the outcomes and the supports that we provide to get to those outcomes, which are historically whatever we do for teachers, educators, staff. But those are on the board floor, which is fine. But I think it's worthy of us to have a conversation more than once in some cases, and that they are specifically aligned to what our evaluation is. My desire is that, and why I named it Student Outcomes, was to really help it better align to what our roles and responsibilities are within that evaluation. So within the evaluation, our job is to give rapport and feedback on our four main things. And so that's why I was saying it should be student outcomes focused, and it's based upon SEL, literacy, transitions, and numeracy. Again, that is my direction as chair. That is not fleshed out in policy. And that could change, as I'm not chair or as somebody else takes leadership and wants to do something different, they absolutely could. But that was the reason why I wanted to change the name, was that we would still talk about curriculum as needed. I think, frankly, that would probably look like a presentation within the director's reports that we receive, instead of it being a committee specifically on that. But I would like for us to focus our T&L time into outcomes time, and it be focused on those four things that we're talking about within our evaluations.
Yeah.
Or the four main things we talk about in our evaluations, I should be clear.
Abigail.
Well, I think one of the things we also look at in our evaluation is teacher retention and the panorama surveys, and all of that is a direct result of how well we are supporting our staff. And I have actually requested that we include more of that panorama survey. I think it's really important for us to hear back, and I've also requested to include teacher retention numbers in the information that we receive so that we know what's happening at the school level. So to me, that they're so intertwined to me that it's hard to tease them out from each other, and student outcomes it's such a clinical sounding thing that makes it sound, and this may be me misunderstanding it, but when I first read it, my initial thought was, all we care about are test scores. And I know that's not your intent. I know that. I know that's nobody's intent on the board. But that's what I felt like when I saw that student outcomes, that we're just looking for what their numbers are at the end of the year and how well they've done on this test or that test. And that's not all we care about. We have very robust, deep conversations about SEL. We have very robust and deep conversations around how we are supporting all of our students in ways that may or may not show up on a test. And that's because we care about the whole child. And so that's one of the reasons why it just, to me, and I know this is kind of hemming and hawing, and I'm fine leaving it at teaching and learning with Dr. Nabata McKinney's suggestion. I was just confused why we were changing it at all. And if we are going to change it and it's important to you that it says student outcomes, then I would like to include something else to show that we're also looking at it as a broader picture.
Yeah, go ahead.
Would we be amendable to changing it? I don't want to say educator outcomes, because to me that feels too test like Yeah. So my thought is if we changed it to student support and outcomes, because oftentimes our outcomes conversations are what we want our outcomes conversations to be with our staff, and we've been encouraging about them, have been not just what is the finality of it, but how did we get here and what do we need to do to get to where we want to get. So would there, to me, again, this is all semantics. Teaching and learning to me feels very much like it's curriculum based, and so that, and historically that's what we've done a lot of, and so I was trying to push it. If we want to keep it at teaching and learning, and that's the will of this body, that's fine. I was just trying to be more clear with what my expectations were, which was student supports and outcomes. And so I just put student outcomes because, frankly, that's what I saw in a lot of examples from other boards. And I thought that is direct. So what do we think about student supports and outcomes? And then any...
So, Chair Elrod, since you brought this one to our attention, would you like to sort of just state after this conversation what sort of adjustments you're thinking we might make? Like, tell me where you've landed.
To just that? Just to student outcomes or teaching and learning or whatever it's called. Again, the
rewording, like what you think. Yeah, where you would you like to make any adjustments to what we see on the screen for consideration by the committee?
I'm fine with it being director evaluation and support. That's fine. And I would prefer it to be student supports and outcomes.
Okay.
But, yeah.
Okay, so student supports and outcomes.
I'm trying to be
and director evaluation and support. How does everybody, we have thoughts on that?
Yeah.
I would make a motion to approve this change in policy 1.300 as Chair Elrod just suggested.
Second.
Okay. All in favor? All right. And Dr. Severe, did you get that?
I've captured those.
With the adjustments? Okay, great. Thanks, everyone.
Mike, if you can scroll to the next.
Next, we have 1.802. This is very much a case of a policy that, there's just a lot there, y'all. You know, we talk a lot about, is it policy or is it procedure? I think this is a really good example of where every single little tiny thing about it was baked in. So a lot of the things that you see removed here aren't being removed from the procedures that we follow. They simply didn't necessarily belong in policy. And I'll ask Dr. Severe to sort of like go through it with a little more explanation and expand on that as necessary.
Thank you, Chair. So this is one of those cases where it was brought to my attention that we needed to make one small update in this policy to correct the name and get the name right of the person who was the contact for these various grievance procedures. And then upon further review, we realized that that name doesn't even really belong in there. We're required to publish that name. However, because that name is a fluid thing and it can change with job description, someone comes into the district, someone leaves the district, someone's role changes, that it made more sense to put that into a more nimble document, which are administrative procedures, which you give Dr. Battle the authority to promulgate, which we actually house in our office. So having said that, we looked a little deeper into it, and it's sort of one of those how it started and how it ended things. We realized that there's an awful lot of procedural language in policy, and we have an entire other set of documents that fall out from underneath these board policies that are called administrative procedures, and a lot of these things were a lot more procedural. So in working with the staff here, with our partners at Metro Legal, picked up and copied and pasted and updated and got right tweaked in terms of recent law into procedure. So it looks a lot like a lot of these things are going away. They're just getting placed into the right bucket. So with that, I would call all of these, even though I would call this a large set of technical corrections.
All right, I'll start with Abigail, if you have anything to... No questions. Okay. Christian?
I don't know anything, so.
Okay. Okay. Huh? Berthena? Cheryl? Aaron?
Yeah, actually. Sorry. I just want to make sure in what you're saying, Dr. Sevier, we are moving things out of a policy and into a procedure. The things here, I mean, 504 and ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, these are very extensive pieces of legislation. So we are not going to be losing, as a board, oversight in any way because there already exists all of this oversight through the law. Is that correct?
That's correct, and you always have. I mean, essentially, this document continues to maintain that oversight by saying that Dr. Battle shall maintain procedures that are compliant with federal statute.
Yeah.
And that's what you're asking her to do, is
Right.
to follow the law.
Yeah, and I know I hear on occasion from parents who are dealing with IEP questions or 504 questions or ADA questions, and grievance procedures are important, and having those outlined is very important, and having that be clear is very important. I was able to find all of that easily on the website today, where the procedures will still live there with all of this information, and as it gets updated, if there are any things that would come to the level of the board might need or want oversight, we still have that capability. Nothing about that has changed in this policy.
That's correct. And in fact, all those procedures have already been rolled, all this language has already been rolled into the administrative procedures.
Right.
So it's kind of a belt suspender issue, right?
Okay.
So we've got it in two places now. We just need to clean this up so that if that administrative procedure were ever needed to be amended in any way to stay compliant, it wouldn't be out of line with what's currently posted on the board's site in terms of policy. We want to make sure those documents never run counter to one another.
And functionally, for educators and students and families, this change does nothing to change what rights, rules, procedures they have available to them.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion?
I move to accept.
Okay. All those in favor? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll send it back to you for
All right.
this next one. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sevier. So now we're moving on to the third item on the agenda, 4.2051 magnet schools. This is a proposed addition to our existing magnet school policy. The highlighted portion would be the new portion. And this is, I crafted this in response to the lengthy discussion we had specifically about academic magnet schools during our August 29th board retreat. So appreciate that robust discussion and the fact that I was able to come at this already having had a conversation with my colleagues about it. Again, my voice is going to hold out, hopefully. So here's the addition. Beginning with the fifth grade class of the 24-25 academic year, pausing to remind everyone that that will be the first year that all fifth grades are in elementary school. So all middle schools start with sixth grade by that year. Each currently enrolled Metro Nashville Public Schools student who meets the full entrance standards and criteria may apply for admission to an academic magnet school. Should eligible applications for Metro Nashville Public Schools students exceed the number of available seats in the academic magnet school, those applications shall be entered into an equally weighted blind selection process. No preference will be offered to any student based on which school they currently attend, nor shall any additional enrollment criteria or preference based on which a school a student currently attends be allowable as a part of the eligibility or selection process. Currently enrolled Metro Nashville Public School students who meet the full criteria for eligibility to apply to an academic magnet school in the district by the published deadline and choose to apply for entrance to that academic magnet school for the upcoming academic school year shall receive consideration for those positions prior to any eligible application from students currently not enrolled in a Metro Nashville Public School. I'm going to take it around the table again, so I'll start with you, Abigail.
Sure. I think this is very in line with what we had already discussed at our retreat. I find that it really dovetails nicely. I would like to make one friendly amendment. For the sentence on line 11, it starts midway. No preference will be offered to any student based on which school they currently attend, nor shall any additional enrollment criteria or preference based on which school a student currently attends be allowable as a part of the eligibility or selection process. I would just like to add, no preference would be offered to any Metro Nashville, no preference will be any student based on which Metro school they currently attend or which Metropolitan Nashville Public School they currently attend. Because right now, the only preference that's being given is for particular Metro schools. There are no outside schools that are getting preference, just Metro schools. And my concern, the reason I wanted to add that is because it sounds like we're saying there will be no preference given to anybody in any school, no matter where they attend. And then the next sentence goes on to say, currently enrolled Metro Nashville Public School students who meet the full criteria to apply, blah, 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 and choose to apply shall receive consideration for these positions. And so it sounds like we said no preference will be given, and then it sounds like, but we're giving considerations. And so they sound like two separate things. And so I just wanted to make sure that we're being clear that we are looking at the 4 schools that are getting the preference right now, that are Metro schools. No preference will come for those Metro schools where they attend currently. But consideration for Metro Nashville students will come first when we are starting from scratch and drawing lottery numbers. I don't know that I explained that very well.
No, I understand. Yeah, it's a clarifying point to also add to that line that it is referring to Metro Nashville Public Schools. I think that, yeah, I would be agreeable to that addition. Christian, you have any?
Sure. So I'm late to the party. My apologies. My apologies. So I started today trying to call around to the magnet principals because I don't think, well, better yet, I know I haven't engaged them. So I need to understand kind of what their capacity numbers are. I will ask you and Chair Elrod if it is okay for me to ask Dr. Battle, if it is okay to ask Mr. Lattimore, as I see him in the audience, if he might be willing to chat through some high-level numbers at our magnet schools.
I just want to say that a lot of what you received in the email was that information.
And they're here to capture.
Touche.
We're not sure exactly where we're going, and I want to make sure that we know where we're going before we go and spend a lot of time on data collection and analysis. So they're here to just.
I'll take that.
But Christian, if you want to put forward the questions you have, those may have been answered in the pre-information.
So I looked in those. So what I'm getting at, when I look at the pathways to Hume Fogg and then look at the pathways to MLK, please know that I understand we have other magnet schools, but I'm looking at those two because those seem to be the ones we have most conversation around in this city. There seems to be a lot more diversity in MLK's pathways. And so I want to ensure that we're thoughtful about maybe how to replicate that diversity as opposed to stripping that away, right? The other side of that, or not even the other side, a second point to that is that it seems that those 2 schools are not at capacity. I did not know that they have exhausted their wait lists. So I think the other the other side or the issue there is that so many parents don't know that they can apply after those initial entry dates. So after 7th grade at MLK, after 9th grade at Hume Fogg. And so I would ask that maybe we consider, I've still been forming the thought, and I'm sorry, I don't have it fully formed, because I don't want to only speak to the principals. I don't want to only speak to the magnet school parents, but I do think it's worth us capturing their thoughts or what their experiences were. I also think there's something around, when we talk about foundational supports, I can't help but go back to the idea that MNPS is being so thoughtful about engaging in that before pre-K space. So working with other city leaders to kind of figure out what's happening as soon as a child is born or is brought into a family. I think there may be even something there, because when we talk high level about students that are gifted or that are already ahead of the curve by whatever standards we have, there seems to be this conversation around making sure that every child at every school has opportunities for AP courses and to be pushed academically, and that's something that we want for every child. But there's also something to be said about foundational skills being missed before children come to MNPS. And so how would we shore up diversity even earlier on? Because I know the gifted and talented department has really been working hard and really seeing some good results in diversifying students' populations and making sure that both educators and families know how to access it and what it looks like to recommend. I mean, all those things. So again, I'm sorry to derail us. I haven't fully formed a thought yet. It's just that there's something about the MLK pathways that I just don't want to lose. But I don't have a clear path forward with how to support that across Hume Fogg, and not to pit these two schools or to say that they're the only places that we need to be thinking through the magnet process. But that alone has me just thinking, what else are we missing? Like, because the reality is, when you have, I just remember when former council member Ed Kendall was in those conversations around, I think it was the Rose Park pathway, and John Early specifically, the John Early pathway. There came out of that some unintended consequences. So I just keep thinking about the idea of unintended consequences. They're going to be some no matter what, but we want to try to reduce them as much as I can. So I don't know that I have a specific question or even a specific solution, but these are the thoughts rolling around in my mind.
I appreciate that. I do want to say, Hume Fogg does exhaust their wait list. It's MLK that does not. No, MLK does.
They do.
MLK does exhaust their wait list. Hume Fogg does not. There is a wait list for Hume Fogg. I just want to also.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'll come.
I also want to say that this policy came not just from our August 29th discussion. I have documentation around parent discussion about these pathways going all the way back to the Parent Advisory Council in 2015. So I just want to be sure that, just to put that out there, this has been an ongoing discussion among MNPS leaders and families for many, many years. This is my attempt to provide us with a starting point to start getting at these issues. So I wanted to just kind of throw that out as we're continuing with this, because the bottom line is, I'm not going to say we're going to come up with like the perfect solution just within this conversation. But the bottom line is that there are some issues with the pathways and how they are perpetuating a lack of diversity in the academic magnet high schools, or maybe. So I'll keep going down the line. Chair Elrod. Oh, sorry.
No, pish posh. I can come back around.
Okay.
Thank you. So my first comment is okay, you're looking at me.
No, I have to use the restroom.
Okay. Sorry. I first appreciate that it would not affect students that are currently enrolled and going through that pathway process, so that they would not be affected and put those families in a potential lurch. So I appreciate that addition to the 24-25 academic school year, which came from those discussions within our retreat. My concern is, I'm hearing from a number of families just over the past couple of days, probably starting this weekend, that need to know and they're having some hard time understanding what this does. Though we have had discussions, and there are some families that I've even reached out proactively to discuss this with them. They're still trying to figure out what exactly does this do. So what I want to make sure is that we are all clear on what it does, which is that and of course, do you want to give those, or do you want me to say them and you correct me?
I mean, I'll just tell you that the intention of it is to give every student currently enrolled in Metro Nashville Public Schools to essentially make every Metro Nashville Public School a potential pathway to the academic magnet schools, and to give those children preference over students who would be entering the district new at that point of entrance.
Okay.
Yep.
So that has been, in essence, how I have described it. I frankly probably led with it removes students coming from outside the district into the district. But in essence, the concerns are that I'm hearing from some family is that they feel concerned about it because it will affect their siblings of current students and so on and so forth. And they feel like they wish they were a part of more discussions about it. Not sure how to reach to that conclusion, besides us considering to discuss it over and over again. I'm going to defer my time, but I might have a second question, but I'm going to defer my time because I know we have 3 more people. Yeah.
All right, Berthina.
I'm going to defer at this moment while I continue to collect my thoughts on this and articulate it in a way that helps.
Cheryl?
Yes, so I am I'm in agreement with Chair Elrod on this one. I have had families reaching out asking, how does this impact me? Give me the quick and easy. I don't need all the heretofores and there and all the legalese and all. They just want to know how this is going to impact them. And the question about fewer available seats is definitely coming into play. And the other thing is, as Chair Elrod said, the grandfathering and potential loss of available seats for siblings that are on the same track. So one of the biggest questions that I've heard is, where's the community engagement? Why haven't we had an opportunity to share our feedback on this? And so I would, I'm also still thinking through this process, but those are some of the things that I'm hearing right now.
Erin.
So, I'd echo a couple of the things that Ms. Mays and Ms. Alrod had said about community engagement, which was actually one of the bigger things that came from my constituents and folks that I talked to today. For me, this all comes back to, and we talked about this at our retreat, but it comes back to the idea, and actually I think it was really well summarized by, I'm going to get the name wrong, Dr. Battle, the new program with Harvard, the National Education Equity Lab. In the National Education Equity Lab release, the woman who runs that organization said, while talent is evenly distributed, opportunity is not. And that's sort of like, to me, what this policy and what academic magnet policy comes back to, which is whatever we're doing here, we should try and make sure that opportunity is evenly distributed. And I think that's the intent here, right? The intent here is very much to think about how can we evenly distribute opportunity to students to engage in the programs at academic magnet schools. And there are, and I actually, one of the first things I did when I moved to Nashville was I was a grad student and I served on a committee in 2004 that looked into a bunch of these same issues. And actually one of the biggest takeaways from that group was around transportation, right? And transportation being a major impediment to opportunity at academic magnet schools. And I know we've discussed that on this board, and we discussed it at the retreat. And so I think I am here for and believe in the background purpose of this, which is to make sure that opportunity is evenly distributed. I don't feel like I know, and I also recognize that policies are frequently made with imperfect data. And that this is probably an area where we're going to continue to have imperfect data. That said, I do have some data questions that I'd be eager to see answered, and I appreciate the data that has already been provided and discussed. But I am curious, about overall, and I think I said this at the board retreat as well. Overall, how many students across the district are qualifying for academic magnets? Of those students that are qualifying for academic magnets, where are they coming from? How many of those students are then accepting the academic magnet slot? What impacts that, right? So in conversations with constituents over the last couple of days, but frankly over the last, because I was part of the PAC that had all of those conversations back in the day too, is why are people accepting or not accepting, or applying or not applying? There are lots of school districts that have tried various ways to get at this same question of opportunity and access being equal. And so I support the idea. I'm not sure if it's the thing that's going to get us to the goal, which is opportunity and access, are equal for all kids. I am curious to know what a new mayor who is very interested in transit might be able to help us do from the perspective of, could we offer more opportunities in some way for students to have transit to these academic magnet schools. So I'm not necessarily sure, sort of as other folks have said, exactly what I'm saying at this point, other than I appreciate the purpose behind this. I don't know that I feel like it's fully there yet. I'm not sure. I appreciate also the attempt to get at, let's take a step, right? Let's have a conversation. And I'm glad we're doing that. And I hope, actually, as my colleagues have said, that we can do a little bit more of that, too, with community members as well.
I appreciate that. Just to try to address a few of the points brought up, hear you about the pathways. I want to point out that one of the big differences here, MEGS is not a zoned school. So that pathway, that MEGS to Hume-Fogg pathway, is sort of a different animal in and of itself, and we see the demographics at MEGS and Hume-Fogg very much reflecting that. While the different pathways that have been created have been very much an attempt to get at this lack of diversity in the academic magnet high schools. I mean, where we sit right now, of all 9th through 12th grade students in Metro Nashville public schools, 22% of Asian students and 17% of white students go to either MLK or Hume-Fogg. 0.06% of black students and 0.02% of Hispanic Latino students go to either Hume-Fogg or MLK. So it's clear we have an issue that we need to get at here that is not representative of the district as a whole. I also want to say, I appreciate what you say about transit, because if the attempt through this draft of a policy is to increase the representation of students from all across the district and to have students from a lot of different areas, even just geographically, attending MLK and Hume-Fogg, that is going to be really, really challenging, given our, lack of robust public transit options. So I think that is a good starting point for us to talk with the new administration about how we can really work together on something like this. Also, speaking to the discussion, I just want to be sure it's understood. This isn't something that I pulled out of thin air. And I know everyone sitting here understands that. And I think a lot of parents who have been actively engaged and involved in this conversation for many, many years. I mean, I was just reading a document that the Parent Advisory Council put together on this very topic in 2015. So this did not come out of nowhere. This is my honest attempt to start thinking about how we can have an effect on the lack of diversity in our academic magnet high schools from a policy level. I'm not attempting to add procedure to this policy. I'm not attempting to get at issues of, what qualifications we are using. I'm not attempting to get into those specific areas. What I am attempting to do is, with the board we have now that clearly has an equity focus, for us to take a crack at providing a directive through policy that we are no longer okay with those academic magnet high schools not being representative of the diversity in our district as a whole. So that is what I'm attempting to do here. I also hear what we're saying about the discussion, and what I'm going to recommend right now is that we go ahead and pull this from the consent agenda for our full meeting and put it on the October agenda. Or no, let's not even put it on an agenda. Let's just pull it. We're going to just defer it indefinitely because we're going to give all of the board members the opportunity to have some community discussions. We will put it on a future governance committee meeting again, where we will reconvene having had those robust discussions with the community, and we'll take another crack at this draft at that point, because what I would really like to see us do as a board is come out of this. I want to remind y'all, there was no magnet school policy at all. Nothing until we passed this sort of standard language in 2022. So I'm challenging all of you to go out in the community and have those discussions and think about how we can appropriately, from a policy level, take a crack at this and doing something about this lack of diversity. Okay, I'm going to give everybody a chance for one more go round. Abigail.
I think one of the things we really need to think about is, why were the pathways put in place? What was the purpose? Why were we wanting to do that? And all of our history tells us that we added John Early, we added Rose Park because we recognized that there was a diversity issue. And we added those pathways as a way to try to combat that and to open it up to a more diverse group. So has that worked? We have some data on that. And we have seen for the 22-23 freshman class, for both MLK and for Hume Fogg, that going into 9th grade, 25 students were enrolled from 8th grade at Rose Park Middle School. And that is the smallest number of well, I guess the head middle school one is different too. But the one that really stuck out to me a lot is that when we were looking at the Hume Fogg pathway, and that one is the one that we have really keyed as being the least diverse of all of our schools in general, but also especially of our magnet schools. John Early was supposed to attempt to provide more diversity, and in 22-23, 2 freshman students came to Hume Fogg from John Early. Out of their entire school, 2. Now, we don't know if that is because of transportation issues. We don't know if that's because they decided they really loved that cluster and they want to stay there. We don't know why. But we do know that it's not providing the diversity that it had been intending to do. And so one of the things we really need to think about is, if the intent of the pathways has not been met, then how can we reconfigure this so that we're going back to what the original intent is? And the original intent has always been to have our academic magnets represent the diversity of our school system. And when that's not happening, we've tried different things to make it happen, and we need to be able to say, we have data from that, we've seen what has happened with this, and when it's not working, how can we work to fix it? What can we do to put in place that's going to do something different, as opposed to continuing to try the same things and just hoping it'll change? And I think we do have enough data from 1999 until today to see how those pathways have worked out. And we have seen a decrease in diversity, especially at Hume-Fogg, markedly from when I graduated there in 1999 to today, where it is the whitest school in all of Metro.
Christian.
Thank you. So I'll continue to stress that this is truly a conversation about changing hearts and minds, but I know that that's not something we can do at this board table, so we have to focus on policy. But there are a few different things. I certainly agree and appreciate that we need to start having those conversations and then continue to have them. I do want to offer us context, and even to the viewing public, that the idea that we come out of this in a month or 2 months with a ready to move forward policy, like it's okay for us to take our time with this, because this is something that is going to be nuanced. It is going to take a lot of different stakeholder conversations. It is not going to be perfect, but it's going to be a step in the right direction. So I appreciate the idea that we'll have more conversations, and want to honor your focus and your dedication to this. So I think I'm preparing myself mentally for this to be a much longer conversation than maybe others in the community have expected it to be. When we talk specifically about Megs and Head, and even if you lump in John Early, it is interesting that MLK is so much more diverse with the zone school head there. I live in North Nashville, though. So many families just don't even know. I think more than anything, it's not even a lack of marketing, but a lack of understanding that parents just don't even know. The idea that so many families don't know that they can apply to those magnet schools after the initial entry date. So I think there's a lot of that we're going to have to work through, that even when we have conversations with the community, we're going to have to make sure that we're still letting parents know, because if I can be frank, I asked people that were in my immediate circle. You know, last year was my 20-year anniversary or 20-year reunion from MLK. And so I was asking a few friends of mine that had gone to Megs, asked their parents, just kind of did a quick swath. And so many of them just, even with either grandchildren or young children now that are in the magnet school system, they just don't know. I mean, so many families, especially when we talk about diverse families, they're not in these conversations. So they've never been able to offer us quantitative or qualitative data. They just haven't. And so I think we have to be very focused in reaching out to communities that we're trying to serve more appropriately, and make sure that focused conversation is happening with them in a way that does not do harm to our non-magnet schools. Because what I don't want people to start saying, or continue to say honestly, is that the magnet school is my focus or the magnet school is my option. Like, no, all of our schools are, which is why we're pushing this idea that every student is known and that in every school they have opportunities. And so I think as we're having the magnet conversation, we continue having that conversation with Dr. Battle, understanding all the different opportunities that are being provided in our non-magnet pathways that are very high level in nature, while we're having this conversation about increasing diversity. So just making sure that those two things happen at the same time, so that every time. Go ahead, baby.
I'm sorry. I don't want to cut you off, but I want to be sure that everybody has a chance
Then the last thing that I'll say, nope, I'll leave it there. That's good.
Okay. I just want to be sure everybody has a chance to voice, since this is sort of hopefully our jumping off point for more conversations. Rachel Ann.
First, I want to say I appreciate you owning this large topic, and the only way to eat an elephant is bite by bite. So I appreciate the work that you have done in that, and of course the feedback that you have taken to heart and put not just in this, but in other conversations we've had. To that point, I would really appreciate within your, which I think is the right move to defer, if you would provide to us as a board what you eloquently said to us about what your intention is and what the outcomes are that this creates. This is good policy words, but I think people just want to know, how does it affect me when it comes down to it? So if you could provide that to us in part of our conversations. But again, I really appreciate that we're trying to make it where all schools are a pathway to our academic magnets. That is the ideal and most equitable form of us providing those magnets. It also decreases, to my colleagues, and several colleagues have made this comment both now and in the past, it has been several unintentional consequences, and there will be going forward with all policies. But an unintentional consequence of our current magnets has been that our zoned or neighborhood schools are not adequate enough, or they are not the place to go to. They're somehow less than. And so that is obviously not the case. And it also deflects from the incredible work that's been done, not just by MNPS leadership, but also our families and our students and our teachers within those schools. So I want to make sure that we give them some talk, as well as we're discussing magnet schools and how it impacts them through the pathways, but also those individual zone schools. So I appreciate the opportunity to have better, maybe stronger conversations with them, but also from the person that's been doing the heavy lifting to give us those true intentions and echo those back. Thank you.
So we have 4 minutes left, and I definitely want y'all to be able to say something if you'd like to. Berthina?
Yes, I just want to start off by saying thank you for bringing up this topic. Thank you for being thoughtful in your approach to have this conversation and open this conversation up. Some of the things that I would like to see as we continue to have conversations is, what is the implications? What is the implications towards what potentially this current policy that you have written will have on our district and what we currently have in place? What are the implications for families, for teachers, for schools, all of that as we think about this robust plan of diverting? I also want, as we transition, when we talk about equity and what's out there, I also want to make sure that as we continue to have these conversations, that families know what is currently going on in our district and the great work that Dr. Battle is implementing to provide advanced academics across our district. The fact that we are partnering with Stanford and Howard are huge things. The fact that we provide Nashville State, where students can get associate's degrees as they graduate. These are all opportunities that are happening within our current high schools and the partnerships post-graduation. And so I just want to make sure that we are, and we are, but as board members, that we are continuing to be thoughtful in how we have this conversation, the impact that it will have across our district for families, for schools, so forth and so on, and that as we create this policy, we get a policy that really works for everyone based on that data. Thank you.
Cheryl?
Yes, so I wanted to echo what has been said. I really appreciate your efforts in pulling this together. This is a huge lift, and I thank you for taking that on. We appreciate you taking that bullet for the rest of the board. But I want to say, as we kick this back to community, we have had a lot of people reaching out to us saying that, oh, there's not been any community engagement. Here's your chance. We are going to be out talking about this particular policy. It is going to be up to you to make sure you're attending these meetings to get that information. You can't come back to us and say, well, I didn't know, if you're not attending the meeting. So I encourage everyone who has a concern to attend your community meetings, and I'm sure your board members will share that information publicly. So be sure to reach out and find out when those meetings are being held.
And I just want to say as well, board retreat discussions and governance, this is the only mechanism we have to have these discussions. Because of sunshine laws, we're not sitting around in secret coming up with these ideas for policies. This is the only mechanism for any of us to attempt to write into policy what we believe to be the will of the board based on other publicly available discussions. So, this is the way we create a jumping off point for something like this. I'm sorry. Erin, go ahead.
I was actually going to say that, so I'm glad that you said it, because it is It is, I've been surprised as a board member how difficult it is to have difficult, expansive policy conversations because this is the forum in which we have to have it. And we almost like, we have to put something on an agenda to have a conversation with each other about it. We have to put something on the agenda to then get to a place where we can have a conversation with the public about it. And so, that's been surprising to me that can be sort of harder than I anticipated it being. So I just want to echo the thanks for bringing this in your role as governance chair. It's the right place for us to have the conversation. It's the right conversation to be having. And I look forward to continuing it.
Thank you. And I just want to say, while other legislative bodies may make the decisions behind closed doors, that is not how we do it on the school board. So this is how we do it. So move forward into the community, have the conversations, and let's, we may, Chair Elrod, be looking at another potential, like a working session after we've had those conversations. But I appreciate everyone for the engagement. And this meeting is adjourned.